Well, everyone, there is a bit of gloom floating around these days. And all that means is we should have a chat about it and work out what the crack is. Nice and simple. But there is anxieties going around, people not knowing what's around the corner for World of Warcraft, right? 9.1 feels amorphous and far away. Or maybe people wondering why they've drifted away from the Shadowlands expansion in spite of all of the launch hype that they felt. Now sure, loads of people are having fun. I'm actually one of them. But even those people, people like me, we are noticing others wandering off. So what is going on here, right? How can you have a record-selling World of Warcraft expansion end up in a funk pretty quickly? Is it even in a funk? And would you like to get funky with me? With Skillshare, today's sponsor, and where the first 1,000 of you to follow my link in that description will get a free trial. And a free trial that is twice as long as the normal one, and it's just $10 a month after that. Now, Skillshare, you know it. It is packed with thousands of incredible classes across so many different things. Design, writing, illustration, productivity, and of course way more. And today, I've got a duo from DKNG. And honestly, what happened is the art from 3D illustration, creating isometric designs in Illustrator, that was just really eye-catching. So I clicked on it, I checked it out, I learned a bunch, I had a great time. I mean, just look at the student projects that came out of this one, they're great. I mean, look at all the, all the skills and fun you'll have actually getting that, and that's hireable stuff too. And they've also done productivity for designers, which I think is a great follow-up because as somebody who's in a creative field, I always like to learn how other people get stuff done. And Skillshare is where you can get that and so much more, be it photography, writing, productivity, and you can check all that out for free with our free trial. That is, of course, twice as long as the normal one you normally get. So hit up that link down below. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring. And with that said, let's go. Shadowlands launch was great, right? I mean, it sold incredibly. Blizzard's marketing and the initial launch experience, of course bolstered by just segment growth in gaming in general because of stay at home, it all led to a big success. And when people actually got stuck in, it actually worked out quite well at the start. It was a roaring launch, We hit max level and bam, we had reasonable gearing, right? I mean, I was in Battlegrounds getting honor for unranked gear, I was going through a great new set of Mythic Zero dungeons that I loved, and generally, it was just fun. And in those early days, the game just worked so well, right? It's that sort of time where, it's pre-raid gearing, and your goals are just so damn clear. And the early gearing systems in the game felt, in many ways, decently paced and quite attainable, quite targetable with your time. And that just meant that you could log in, you could progress, and you'd be happy. Now sure, some of the Covenant choice stuff still ticked off, some not always perfectly rosy, but the basics of that early loop kind of just worked out pretty well, right? Shadowlands had a pretty awesome honeymoon period. Where in BFA, I played for 3 days, I saw it for what it was, and then I lost the will to live. In Shadowlands, I kept playing. I was excited, I was having fun. That's all great stuff, and I think that what I experienced there was actually many people's early impression of this game. Bar some. I enjoyed early Torghast because I was a hunter. I already liked the Bis Covenant of Night Fae. So if I was a class who felt forced into a covenant that I did not like, and then by the time that a few more of the layers opened, got super hammered by Torghast when all I really wanted to do was get some soul ash, then yes, that initial impression wouldn't be so good as the one that I had. Yet my impression is what it is. My actions felt meaningful in those early days, I was in the driving seat of my character, and it was satisfying. Most notably, this was also all pre-Great Vault stuff. It's when my gear and my upgrades were kind of just there, waiting for me to come and get him. So it was that exciting period of a new World of Warcraft expansion that absolutely did exist for this one. Did the Shadowlands honeymoon lead to a long and happy marriage? What can I say? We had fun together, but when reality set in, that's where Shadowlands started to have some issues. So let's talk about it. For many of the casual players, the rate at which souls were obtained vastly outpaced anima, to the point where it was just a situation of good luck getting the cosmetics that you want and upgrading your sanctum. Not satisfying. Soul earning set odd expectations. And hey, the Maw and World Quests, that hardly set people on fire, did it? And then the campaigns, they were time-gated by renown, so the storyline actually didn't really have pacing or anything like that. You just got drip-fed little bits. And also, I don't think the campaigns were really that great overall. Especially gameplay-wise. I mean, your average Timeless Isles Rare or Elite had more interesting gameplay that you had to pay attention to than, just about all the campaign stuff, at least for me going through Night Fae. And then there's Torghast. I mean, man, talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Versions of Torghast on beta were pretty awesome little roguelite playgrounds where you just went in and beta and you kind of enjoyed it for your own sake. It was like, oh wow, this is how broken a demon hunter or hunter can be. Less so in life. Soul Ash, right? Soul Ash comes from the worst version of Torghast. The one that doesn't last long enough in terms of the number of powers that you get, so that you never actually get that fun, broken anima power feel for your class. And yet, because the pacing doesn't work of your power curve, even though it's shorter, it still feels really long. Yeah, that bizarre, hamstrung 6th floor version is what we had to do for player power. And then the balancing was wildly inconsistent, and that forced Blizzard to nerf it. Plus, failing in it felt terrible in a way that almost no modern roguelite has achieved. And on top of that, the rewards sucked. Yeah, you need Soul Ash, but what else? Island Expeditions had so much more in terms of rewards. I mean, ouch. And then you hit the Maw. What's there, right? Well, it's actually funny because lots of content, but only really on a technicality, because the zone's overall format didn't work out that well. You see, for the most part, you went there for Stygia, and Stygia went into two things: Torghast upgrades or player power, via conduit leveling and sockets, especially for the conduits, and many people did do that. Now, why was that? Well, raiders couldn't get potency conduits through raiding for a whole bunch of the time. That's a bit different now, and that meant they had to use Venari. So it actually meant that two of the main reasons why you'd be in the Maw, well, they had nothing to do with the Maw. So, I mean, imagine playing Hades or some other game, but having to do really boring busy work between runs to progress. I mean, that would kill the structure of the game. Yeah, more effort went into making people who aren't interested in Torghast need to do it than perhaps time went into making Torghast have a bunch of cool rewards and progression that would convince somebody to do it for its own sake because it's fun. That overall just left the Maw and Torghast not really coming together. It's not a rosy picture, is it? Meanwhile, I actually ignored all of those bad things I just talked about. I raid logged and I had a blast. I mean, seriously, other than maybe the odd Maw frustration or feeling like the campaigns were underwhelming, I just ignored the stuff I didn't like. My conduits suck, I just got the one BIS Lego that I need to raid, and hell no, I've not been farming up anima. I'm just getting as a byproduct of my raiding. So for me, Shadowlands is not a grindy expansion. But of course, tell that to somebody who's trying to play it like an RPG and wants to upgrade their sanctum and get cool cosmetics. And the odd thing is, I think that all just shows how Shadowlands was put together hastily at the end. I mean, the capped resource for Covenants is souls, and that sets the assumption that souls should be your limiting factor for progress. Yet, we're all flooded in souls and have nowhere near enough anima. So obviously, it feels really grinding to people. Basically, so much of the anima system mixed up with player expectations to the point where I think so many of the cosmetic-driven players, the people who just want to advance their characters in non-gear ways, I think they just see how much work it would take to get a few Covenants in a good state and actually get their cosmetics, that they've decided they'd perhaps rather not. Oh dear, Torghast shattered. Endgame cosmetic sort of character-driven RPG stuff kinda shattered a bit. Mythic Plus had its odd gearing that hurt for a bunch of those players. Raiders sometimes felt like the gear was a bit stingy, and PvPers, well, they had the best gearing system they've had in ages, and they had, a gameplay meta that was a bit more bursty, which, I mean, I liked. So, basically you can see here, though, that many aspects of Shadowlands started off so damn promising and just working, but then they ran aground for easily avoidable reasons. The parts are actually quite great, generally speaking, but the problem is that Shadowlands is less than the sum of them. And that is the tale of the current game we're playing right now. But what about the future? What about the thing that perhaps could give us something to have faith in, have a little bit of confidence in? What about that? Development pace. I think that's the thing we've got to talk about here. When I wrote this and did all my calculations, we were 113 days into the expansion. A few more now, of course. 9.0.5 just came out, but compared to the first, 0.5 patches of a Legion or BFA, it had just about no content. It was just VP and balance. So I don't really count 9.0.5 as content, and I think many players would agree. Let's get into the numbers. So PTRs usually last about 2.5 months. That is around 75 days. Now, assuming 9.1, our first content patch, hit the PTR right as I wrote this video, then it would release on around the 1st of June. And that would be like 180 odd days, 180 something days after Shadowlands' launch. And that's like half a year-ish, with no minor content patch to bridge that gap. And, we're over 113 days in, we've had no new content. If it was BFA, then we would have been just a week away from patch 8.1. That was a content patch that came out 120 days after launch. And that was one that at the time was considered to be late, even by Blizzard. Sure, it had whatever content they had planned, but it also had their stopgap fixes to issues like with Azerite. So BFA was very late initially, but Shadowlands seems even more behind schedule there. It's probably another 2 months behind schedule. Comparisons to Legion then are just funny. By this time in Legion, we had 7.1 returned to Karazhan, and we were about 2 weeks away from 7.1.5. Now, what's interesting is that the pace beyond that was one patch every 77 days up until the end of Argus. Now, BFA was a different story. 8.1.5 to 8.2 was a 115-day wait, and it stung. Now, the problems of BFA clearly slowed Blizzard down. 8.1 was firefighting a bunch of launch issues. Patch 8.2 was trying to fix up Azerite and give us a new thing. It was rough and it was slow for BFA. The waits were long. The Legion comparison, as I said, is just funny. It's kind of sad, actually. Now, many players would expect that Legion-like content cadence to be what we get, and they would be right to. It can feel like money is going less far, like your sub is getting you less content these days. Now, Shadowlands, of course, was delayed. A pandemic forcing a full live production game home, and all that entails. I mean, ouch. Shadowlands beta was nowhere near done at the time of its initial launch date. The delay was needed, but more time was needed than the delay gave, and that's why Shadowlands is kind of great in these broad strokes, but then you look at the details, and that's where it starts to struggle, and the balancing of the systems and the way that they're tied together is the issue. So, a quick time estimate until our next content patch is likely 2.5 months from today's video, maybe 3. Now that means, 180 to 210-ish days since launch, and that's just tough. I mean, yeah, Blizzard stumbles into problems, but the pandemic did hit them, and there is a reason why so many 2021 games have been delayed. Live games don't have that luxury, though. Internal slowdowns are completely apparent to players because we just see them. Especially, not only do we see them, but we feel them when maybe the content itself is a little sparse. In Legion, each order hall had its own campaign, so that's 13 classes. Each spec had its artifact. That's a lot of artifact quests. Professions had their own quest lines too. Suramar, in fact, had its own big zone story, and then the campaign that came in with a patch. Right now, though, we've got no endgame zone only. I mean, there's the mob, but it's not like a Suramar. We've got 4 campaigns, which themselves are kind of content sparse. We've got no profession quest lines. We do have covenants, but there are issues with them. The covenants themselves don't have a massive amount of content, and they are so anime-gated that rewards don't feel obtainable or worth actually pursuing for many, many people. It's a pretty far cry from the mass alting and artifact hunting of Legion, where even each artifact hunt, each thing felt like a distinct activity, not stuff that just had fallen under this humongous anima grind that was all-encompassing. Now sure, in both expansions, us DPS meter obsessed people, we had our raids and our dungeons to do, yeah. But for many people, it's the casual content that is so much of the game. And perhaps that's, and it's kind of sad because I thought this is where Shadowlands could have done quite well for a long time, but it ended up, I think, being where Shadowlands didn't work out that well. Now, of course, the difference is that by now in the Legion expansion, we were a patch in with the new Suramar campaign and the Karazhan Mega Dungeon. And then, of course, for Legion, we also at that time knew we had more around the corner with the Nighthold. And hell, we even knew a bunch about patch 7.2 because of BlizzCon's detailed announcement. An announcement that did a bunch of teasing, right? Even now, in Shadowlands, we have a TLDR of 9.1 from BlizzConline that basically had no specifics. So that means for a lot of people it's harder to feel what's on the horizon, especially with Shadowlands' list of side activities struggling as compared to, say, Legion. It's not an ideal situation to follow up Battle for Azeroth. It's that, I think for many people, that lack of knowing what's next, of feeling like there's good things on the horizon, and I think that's hurting us. It certainly is impacting player sentiment to the point where, it does seem to me like a pretty damn gloomy picture. What's the bottom line then? Should we worry? Well, I'm going to say yes right now, but existentially speaking, no. I just think patches are going to feel late for a while, and that means that you'll feel like there's less WoW to play. And the question is, will future patches suck? Should we worry about those? I think that is the real question. And when I look at, say, 9.0's clear issues, I do mostly, or in many ways, see it as the expansion being hastily thrown together at the end. I'm giving a lot of benefit of the doubt, because, those larger gameplay loops were essentially untested, right? Doing guides at late beta was so damn hard because we just had no idea what numbers were real or what systems were intended. There was even things like one of the Covenant currencies that you get from doing the Anima Conductor stuff, that just appeared without explanation like pretty late on, and we didn't really know what the intent was. And all of that is what makes me think that so many of the issues were just coming together so fast at the end. And that means that if Blizzard had the time, then I think this all would have been in a better place. But they had to hit that release date, it seems. And when you look at patch 9.1, there are signs of promise. It's why I made a whole video about why I'm actually excited for 9.1. Now, certainly, the core issues of Shadowlands are a lot more fixable than BFA's ones, so I do think there is promise here. Basically, I just think it's going to take an unfortunate amount of time to get there, and that will sting. And that means the follow-up question is, will that wait hurt the game for us? I would say, in a way, yeah. It's going to inflict more losses than would be ideal, and that'll hit Blizzard's bottom line, but for us, it'll mean we'll lose guildmates. It's already happened to me, right, to my guild. It's probably happened to a lot of you, and that hurts the game. So, moving past all this, I think that Blizzard just cannot get used to the patch cadence of Shadowlands and BFA. It feels so damn long as compared to what they had just done for Legion, or even to, pre-Siege of Orgrimmar lasting forever, Mists of Pandaria. We need to get our patch cadences looking more like the actual main body of Mists of Pandaria and the main body of Legion. That's the place we need to be in, not this sleepy, the sleepy BFA situation where patches just took an absolute age to get out, or of course, the Shadowlands situation where we're really being damaged as hell by this pandemic, and we're in a weird situation where the content just can't come fast enough, and the current game systems aren't really doing a great job of holding players' attention unless they're just content to do their end game instanced content, at least for many people. So in the short term, it's going to sting. In the long term, I do actually feel quite positive about patch 9.1. I do, though, think that the core, the key to enjoying World of Warcraft in this troubled era of doing anything being hard and taking longer because of obvious reasons, I think it is the ability to recognize when the game's no longer giving you what you want and be okay to just step back and come back later. I think the best thing to do would be to enjoy all of 9.0 that you can actually find enjoyable, and then, instead of running yourself into the ground and all of that stuff, unsubbing. And whenever you do unsub, I would hope with the intention to come back because the future content will be good. What would be important is actually providing detailed feedback as to why, you've taken your lot of the game right now, and why the things that you could do but have chose not to are not drawing in your attention. I think that's probably the best way for you to enjoy World of Warcraft. It'll free up some time to play other video games, and you won't be in a situation where you're forcing yourself into a game and breeding resentment. And it'll also be something that will be good for Blizzard, because one of the things that, from what I understand, they really do find to be quite important is that exit poll, because they do give you an exit survey whenever you unsub. And I think if you do unsub, well, I think it's common decency to let them know why, help them out, because ultimately, wouldn't we all love to have that exciting point in the future? I think that's basically the situation with World of Warcraft right now. There are struggles, and that's basically how we're going to get around them. So that's it. I think if we were to finish anything, I'd like to ask you, what are your top 3 pain points with the game right now? Let me know. And I think that just that very simple, clear feedback is something that's genuinely useful. So let me know that. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.